Occupy Wall Street was a nonviolent protest movement that started on September 17, 2011. The goal of the Occupy movement was to bring awareness to the income and wealth inequality in America between the top 1% and other 99% of Americans. Other goals of the Occupy movement included reducing the influence that large corporations had on the political climate, creating a more balanced distribution of income, student loan debt forgiveness and other relief for indebted students, and creating more jobs and better jobs. The movement was set in motion when a blog site called Adbusters posted a blog urging people to set up tents and peaceful barricades on Wall Street. This is when the Occupy Wall Street hashtag was introduced. The demographic of protesters was fairly young, and much like in the Arab Spring, social media played a pivotal role in getting the movement off the ground. Between the Occupy Wall Street hashtag and We Are the 99% rally cry, they were able to amass a substantial following and even encouraged other countries to start their own Occupy movements. Though they had success gaining attention down the road, the Occupy movement started out small and was not truly recognized as a global movement until police met protesters with violent deterrence. Most infamously, the pepper spray incident where a woman was pepper sprayed viciously by a New York police officer. Other protesters filmed these acts and posted them everywhere they could, and this caused the number of sympathizers for the movement to grow exponentially. At this point, more people started to protest in more locations, and the response from authority positions became more aggressive. More riot control tools were being used and more arrests were being made. Much like younger protesters in the civil rights movement, Occupy protesters seemed to be keen on getting themselves arrested and capturing it all on film and spreading their message to the masses. With their growing support, the Occupy movement captured the attention of the media. However, the media tended to only cover the Occupy movement in a negative light. CNN specifically took every chance they could to downplay the movement and bash its motivations, writing them off as lazy kids that needed to get a job and often highlighting the struggle to find the truly clear goal.
Now for a story that made us say, seriously? The Occupy Wall Street protest entered its third week today. What started as less than a dozen college students camping out in a park near the New York Stock Exchange is now hundreds of protesters, and it's spread to other cities. But what are they protesting? Nobody seems to know.
Outside of social media, there did not appear to be much positive coverage of the Occupy movement. It appeared that the Occupy movement was doomed to fizzle out as another fad. Also, as the movement grew, the mission and goals appeared to become more convoluted and hard to understand. And I think that this is what led to the eventual downfall of Occupy Wall Street.
People are right to say that if you want to adjust tax brackets, lobby, join a political party. But it was about creating a vision of a different world, a world where people actually have their needs met, a humane society. Regardless of our politics, I think that there's a great sense in the United States that think something is fundamentally wrong and that we need to drastically change things. So,
Mark, can I ask you a question and also comment on that? Because it seems to me that the Occupy movement, its biggest problem and its biggest mistake was lack of organization. The anarchists actually ruined it.
Occupy Wall Street was somewhat successful in following the common nonviolent action themes. Occupy Wall Street pretty much followed the nonviolent action model to a T. They used symbolic protest, non-cooperation by refusing to disband their camps in the streets, and defiance by continuing to come out in droves to protest each time there was a march or stand to make. They also amassed a big following and made headlines in global media. So the question is, why is Occupy Wall Street often looked upon as a failed movement? I think the answer lies with the 4 basic steps of starting a nonviolent direct action campaign that we learned from Martin Luther King's letter from Birmingham. First, the Occupy movement had difficulty establishing their grounds for claiming injustice because the mission was unclear outside of the base claim of economic inequality. Second, there was never any true form of negotiation between the protesters and the opposing party. It just appeared to be a cycle of protests, violent outcomes and arrests, social media outcry, and then repeat. I believe that the issue started with the fact that the people who called for the protest initially said outright that there should be no leaders in the movement. I think this was a monumental mistake because if they had established some sort of hierarchy in the system, it would have opened the door for some direct communication between the Occupy Party and the opposing party. I also felt that while the Occupy movement was able to gather a deluge of support from people around the world, they failed to land their message at home. The Occupy movement lacked minority representation, and the change they sought was not one that was particularly measurable. I think that if the protest had been more controlled and didn't rely as much on social media controversy, they could have caught the eye of more influential crowds and maintained some prominent support groups. My perceived failure of the Occupy Wall Street movement does not, however, change my position of whether I think violence is necessary or unnecessary in creating change. While this nonviolent campaign was not wildly successful, I still think that with the proper application and a just cause, nonviolent campaigning can be incredibly effective. After researching this movement, I am convinced that certain situations just require different measures to achieve your desired outcome. Thank you.